I came to the United States when I was 12 years old, and I landed in Pasadena because my late aunt used to live here. And I was born and raised in Beirut, Lebanon. And when the civil war in Beirut started, after 2 years of being in the war, we immigrated to the United States and came to Pasadena. So I have lived in the San Gabriel Valley since then.
2 years of being in the war.
Yes.
What is that? What is that like?
I have images of bullets flying, bombs falling, dead bodies on the streets. And I experienced that as a young girl for 2 years. As a matter of fact, I remember a scene where I was sleeping in my bedroom, and I had gotten up to go to the restroom, and when I came, there was a bullet in my mattress that had flown in from outside. So, yeah.
Oh, geez. So the insecurity of living in those conditions must be astounding.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think about it anymore because I think I have suppressed that memory. But, as a little girl growing up, I didn't see the worst of the war. Thank God my family got us out in 1976. But after that, it was more horrific.
And you must have friends and relatives that were affected later.
Yes, at the time. Not anymore. I think majority of the Armenian population now has immigrated to mostly to the United States and elsewhere in the world.
Do you remember what life was like in Beirut before the war?
I have lots of happy memories. My father gave us a lot of good memories. We used to go to, a lot of weekend outings with them. And, I do. I have memories of my school, my friends there, me walking to school every day. But the 2 years of being in the war and then coming here, I just kind of have just left all of that behind. I don't think about it often.
For 10, you were 10 at the time, right? When the war started.
When the war started in 1974, yeah.
So 2 years to living in a war-torn country. Wow. And now I see it happening on TV, right? And I can't imagine what these families are going through.
Yeah, I mean, growing up here after I immigrated here and getting to know friends, making friends, it's amazing how you see, we take a lot of things for granted here. The simplest thing we take for granted.
So you came at age 12.
Yes.
And at age 12, were you able to adapt to the new country quite well?
It was tough in the beginning. Teenagers are not nice to each other. So I did have a lot of issues in the Pasadena school district. But I did have a friend. My parents had a friend who had a daughter who basically assigned her to me to be kind of my mentor and shadow to kind of get me acclimated to the school system and so on. But, it wasn't easy because I didn't know the language. My education in Lebanon was Armenian, Arabic, and English. However, the English was not a conversational English. It was just, this is a chair, this is a door, this is a dog, this is a cat. So when we came, I didn't know, how to articulate. And then, of course, I had a heavy accent back then. So I was made fun of, a lot.
But you were able to come into an Armenian community.
Yes, but when we came in 76, there weren't a lot of Armenians in Pasadena. Majority of the immigrants came in the 80s. So 76, there were some Armenians who were here from the 50s and the 60s as well. But in 76, it was just very few families.
When did that start to change for you, or had it changed? Like people viewing you as a outsider, or this immigrant who doesn't speak the language?
I would say, it didn't take me long to get into some advanced classes and master my English. And, I was, after a year or two, I was right along with everybody else and taking AP classes and all of that. So I would say probably once I got into college, that's when it started kind of changing.
Did your whole family come together?
Yes. So my mother's side of the family, there was about 3 or 4 families, And I do remember that vividly because we all got in a bus to go to the Beirut International Airport, and we were passing some areas that had snipers. So at some point, the bus driver would tell us, get on the ground, get on the floor of the bus so that you don't get hit by snipers. And then that's how we got to the airport, basically. So it was our family, my aunt, my uncle, and my grandparents.
Well, so I don't know anything about the Civil War there, but so civilians were just being attacked by other...
Oh, yeah. It happens all the time. It happens now, too.
Now?
Yes. Innocent civilians are shot at all the time.
In Lebanon and...
Not just in Lebanon, but in, probably in Syria and Palestine and maybe some other countries.
Ukraine,
yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, they target civilians.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a civil war.
Yeah.
So, it was family against family.
When you say Civil War, so in my mind, like when you say war, I have in my mind an armed army, with uniform. And when you say civil, are these just the people like fighting amongst each other, or
different factions just fighting against each other for different ideologies? Yes. Some Christian and Muslims as well, but basically different factions just fighting with each other.
And they're not all necessarily armed groups, are they? I mean, you would have factions, but there would be individuals fighting individuals.
It could be,
because
yes.
they didn't think the same way.
Exactly. Lebanon is a very complicated country to this day.
Well, the whole background of Beirut and Lebanon is a whole story in itself,
right?
Like you say, and how it was formed and all the different... Well, I think this is true throughout the Mideast.
Right.
Just the complications there in different religions and different cultures, different communities.
Well, I'm Armenian. So because of the Armenian genocide by Turkey in 1915, majority of the Armenians who were marched out of Armenia through the deserts of Deir Zor first landed in the country of Syria. Syria was one of the first countries who accepted the Armenian refugees back then, and then later Lebanon. So that's where a lot of the Armenians are concentrated, the Armenians outside of Armenia.
Right. And I'm only privy to a lot of this Armenian history because of the friends that I have and people who have been on this show. But the history of the Armenians is very complex, right? Depending on where you start and where they came from, right? Iran, Russian Armenian. Teddy is Russian Armenian. Narbe is Iranian Armenian.
Is Persian Armenian, yeah. That's a very popular Persian Armenian name. My family's history, going to my grandparents, they were very involved in the Armenian cause. Again, after the genocide and after going to our kind of adopted countries like Lebanon and Syria, my family and my grandparents started their activism, at a very young age, and then that passed on to my parents and then to us. To me, whenever there's injustice, it affects me greatly, and not just the Armenian injustice, but overall world, injustice towards any culture and any nationality. But mine, I used to listen to my dad sing Armenian songs and cry. So to me, that was instilled in me at a very, very, very young age. So activism to me overall is extremely important. My grandmother has stories basically where the only reason why she survived the march, because she was, her older brother had her on her shoulders during the march. And at one point he got tired and left her by a tree, just left her there. She was, I believe, 2 years old. And, maybe a few minutes later, a family member noticed that my grandmother was not on the shoulder anymore and said, "Where did you leave her?" "I left her by a tree." Well, they went back and got her, and
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here now. Stories like that are very common. Stories of families being, separated, and brothers and sisters not knowing that they existed after, but only found out after 40, 50 years that they have a brother or they have a cousin.
Wow. My only knowledge of the genocide was that they were marched into the desert basically to die, right? Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that people had survived that.
Yeah, a lot died, but thank God that quite a few survived, and they built a diaspora basically.
Wow. I thought it was like 4 million that had been killed. 4.5 million. I thought that was the number. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the number 1.5 million for sure at the time of the genocide, and then probably another 500,000 or so, through the desert.
Boy, how easy is it to reconcile within yourself, this grim history and even contemporary actions that are being taken with, running a business and, raising a family. I mean, it must be something that's always a little conflict.
I often think about that. If I wasn't Armenian and if I didn't have this, how would my life have been different? I wouldn't change a thing, by the way. But, my every being, my every decision, my everything that I do on a daily basis, some part of it has to do with the fact that, we have this situation in Armenia, we have this situation in Artsakh, and I have, my duty. So sort of, you're not free, basically. Part of you is just kind of, chained, and it's just not set free. And it's a very, I don't want to get emotional, which I can get emotional very fast, but it's not easy on anyone. So.
Wow. And I would imagine you share a lot of this with your children.
Yes, they know my dedication and my passion. Sometimes they criticize me for it. They think that I'm not living my life fully, and I'm, but that's a choice that I have made. And
how old are your children?
I have a 34-year-old son and a 33-year-old daughter.
Nice. And they're living local?
They are local. They're both, my son lives in Altadena and my daughter lives in Pasadena. And my son works with us now, so he will be the second generation realtor from the family. So,
right.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's important, right, that you maintain or you preserve history and culture and all that. And, it's important, the good and the bad, right, that people don't forget. So
definitely. No, I mean, if we don't speak out and if we don't point out and if we don't, bring awareness, the world will not know. And it's not just the Armenian culture, but there are a lot of cultures out there that, go through a lot of these, difficult times. But unfortunately, when you are not in a superpower, people do not know about you.
Well, look how it took 100 years just to get it recognized in the U.S.
Right.
If you didn't keep talking about it, it would never have happened.
Well, again, you would think that consciously we would be on the right side of history, on the right side of humanity. But unfortunately, politics and the fact that we're allies with Turkey and we have air bases there and so on and so forth, all of, our morality basically kind of gets skewed because of politics.
Yeah, that's a tough one.